Good morning. My name is Barry W. Ford. I'm a member of Class 14. I tell everybody Class 14 is the best class in the world. I've really enjoyed it. But before we get into today's lesson, let's bow and have a word of prayer. This morning, our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we come with bowed heads and humble hearts, confessing that we are all sinners saved by grace. As I bow this morning, I ask that you would search my heart as John searched the streets of New Jerusalem. And if you find anything in my heart that's contrary to your will and to your way, I ask that you would take it out and remove it, cast it into the sea of forgetfulness, where it will never rise to condemn us in this life or condemn us at thy bar. For realize, Lord, that in your sight, we're all as filthy rags, and we have all sinned and come short of the glory of God. But you being a God of mercy, you've given us another day and another opportunity to set our house in order. And Lord, while I have this opportunity, I just want to pause this morning to say thank you. Not asking for anything, but just thanking you for all the many blessings that thou hast bestowed upon me. Lord, I ask that you remember the sick and shed in, and remember those people who are on their bed of affliction, wherever they might be. Lord, I ask also that this morning that you remember my children and my grandchildren, and not only them, but remember all those people of the household of faith who I'm duty bound to pray for. I ask that you remember the leadership of this church, remember the membership, and remember those that could have been here this morning but gone the other way. And then also, Lord, I ask that whatever I do or say this morning in preparing this lesson will be done for the uplifting and upbuilding of your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We've got a really good lesson, and I know all of you all have prepared and studied hard for it. And I just want you all to know now, you will be tested on this. So, and because of the social distance, you won't be able to copy off anybody else's paper because you're going to be sitting 6 to 8 feet apart. So make sure you understand what I'm telling you. We're talking about invitation to wisdom. It's coming from Proverbs, the 9th chapter this morning. And before we get into thinking about Proverbs, the author of Proverbs is Solomon. And what do we know about Solomon? Well, we know that Solomon's father is David, and his mother is Bathsheba. Now, you probably remember that Bathsheba was married to one of David's men in his army, Uriah. And one evening while David was out on his porch, she was bathing across in a high place up on the roof. And David saw her, and he admired her beauty, so much so that he sent one of his underlings to fetch her and bring her to his home. And as a result of bringing her, she became pregnant with a child. Uriah is in service at this time, and Uriah comes home, and before he goes to his own home, he comes to visit King David to tell him about what's going on the front line. And after discussing this with David, David says, you need to go home and spend some time with your wife, knowing that he had been with Uriah's wife and that she was now pregnant. So Uriah sits and sleeps outside of David's door all night long, saying, I can't go home and be with my wife while my men are on the battlefield. So he won't go home. Next morning, he finds out that Uriah did not go home. He has to come up with another way. And he says to Uriah, stay around a day or two longer and then go back to your men. And when he does go back, he sends a note by Uriah to the captain of his army, telling him to put Uriah on the front line where he would surely be killed. Uriah was killed in battle. Bathsheba had a baby that was fathered by David. The baby died, and after Uriah was dead, David married Bathsheba, and they had another son. And this son was Solomon, the author of today's. If you think about it, Solomon replaced his father as king. And before he became king, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream. And after appearing to him in a dream, the Lord says to him, ask of me what you want and I will give it to you. And so when Solomon awakened, he asked the Lord to give him an understanding heart so he'll know how to judge his people. And that's what we all need, an understanding heart so we'll know how to treat people. Today's lesson is an invitation to wisdom. In today's lesson, I'll do the lesson like I normally would do it in class 14. We'll go through all three of the outlines first, and then we'll come back and discuss it. But today's lesson, wisdom is personified as a woman. And how do we get wisdom? Wisdom comes to us from God. Now, I read somewhere in my Bible that King Solomon had some 700 wives or concubines and 300. That's 1,000. That's a lot of wisdom, any way you look at it. Now, if you want to find this, you can find it in your Bible. From our outline, we've got three outlines. The first outline is wisdom's house. And I'll be reading from the King James Version, verses 1 through 6. It says that wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewed out 7 pillars. She hath killed her beast. She hath mingled her wine. She hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens. She crieth upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him. Verse 5 says, come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish, and live. Go in the way of understanding. This is wisdom's house. Before we get back to discussing that, we'll go through the other two outlines. The next outline is wisdom's beginning, and that's Proverbs 8 through 10. Verse 8 says, reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. And the final outline, folly's house. If you will notice in your reading, I'm sure you have, they're contrasting folly's house and the first part of it, which is wisdom's house. Folly's house says, and still reading the King James Version, a foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither, and as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him. Now those are the three outlines. Now I'm sure that all of you all have prepared, and you spent a lot of time preparing for this lesson. This is really a good lesson. But looking at it and analyzing, when I was thinking about it, wisdom house, you think about what it says. In verse 1, it said, wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out 7 pillars. Now, this is not a lazy person. This is a person who has actually constructed their own house. They're working, so she's doing something. And it says that she has hewn out 7 pillars. Now, I know that you all already know, but 7 in the Bible represents completeness. And when I was a child, I was taught in Sunday school that if you connected the dots on the 7 churches in the Asian Minor, those that if you connected all of those, you would end up with a complete circle, which is 306 degrees. Now, there are a number of places in the Bible where it talks about the number 7. And if you want to, for notation, looking at Revelation 5, 1 and 6, it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. And behold, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the 4 elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth." So we know that Wisdom House was complete. She built it on her own house. She was working, and it was complete. So, and in verse 2, it said that she had killed her beast. She has killed a beast. So she's setting a nice table for somebody to come and enjoy. Now, it also said that she had mingled her wine, which means that she don't want you to drink to excess. She wants you to come to it. You know, it's fine to have a little wine. I don't drink, and the reason that I don't drink, early in my life, I partook of some beverages to excess, and my mom made me swear on the Bible that I would never touch anything with alcohol. So out of honor to my mom, I don't. And for people that like, as long as you can do it, not to excess, overdo it. But anyway, Wisdom has set a feast, and she got a sumptuous meal. Just think about some pot roast and some black-eyed peas and some cabbage greens, and you got all of this, and you're gonna have a little wine with it. In modification, not really drinking a lot. And she said that she has also furnished a table. She set a fine table. She got linen and everything out, and she invited people in. And not only that, it says in verse 3 that she has sent forth her maiden. Before Wisdom went out herself, she had somebody working for her, some people that was having, some of her neighbors, some of the members of class 14 that went over to have a meal with Wisdom. They went out and called all their friends and said, "Well, come on over to Wisdom's house. We're having a fine meal." And so finally, after the maidens went out, or the members of Cade Chapel went out and invited them over, the lady herself of the house said, "I'm going to go out because I want all of my friends to come here." So she went out and she invited the pastor and invited the congregation, and they came to her house and was enjoying all of this meal. And so finally she says she sent forth her maiden, and she went herself, and said she went to the high places where people could see her, high places in the city where they could actually see her and come. And she says in this verse 4, "Whoso is simple, let him turn hither. As for him that wanteth understanding," she said to him. So she's inviting people to come in so they can get some understanding about what she's asking of them. So they come in and they having a fine meal and she goes on and Wisdom appeal in verse 4 is aimed at the simple. The wording describes people who may be viewed as neutral in terms, hadn't made up their mind. Those are simple. They hadn't made up their mind. So Wisdom is inviting them in to convince them that what they need to do. And when I was growing up as a child, my mom used to say that a hard head would make a soft rear end. You know, that was wisdom from my parents that I've gotten. We get a lot of wisdom from our parents. Verse 5 says, "Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine which I have mingled." So she invites all the people, and you've got a free meal. She hadn't paid anything because Wisdom prepared the meal. And she mixed a little water with the wine so you won't get drunk while you're there, because I don't want you to get a ticket going back home under the influence of alcohol while you're driving back. So Lucifer. And then verse 6 says, forsake the foolish and live. That means that if you got wisdom and you stop hanging around with people who are bad influence on you, that you'll get a lot out of it, and you won't be messing up, end up going to jail or doing something where you end up in prison. And go in the way of understanding. So you need to be around people who have a lot of wisdom in them. Now, any questions that you all have, just save them to the end, because we're going to have to move on through this. The second portion of it is wisdom beginning. In wisdom's beginning, it skips the 7th verse. It says, reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Now, one way that you can distinguish between a person who's wise and somebody who's a scorner is one of my teachers when I was in high school, which is a number of years ago, said that convince a fool against his will, and he is of the same opinion still. That simply means you can talk to you blue in the face to somebody that's a scorner, and you're not going to change their mind. You just talking. It's almost just like you're just wasting your breath. But a wise person, if you correct them, they will appreciate it. But a person who's scorning, you're not going to do anything but make them angry, and they're going to give you a piece of their mind. And the only problem with giving you a piece of a mind, they only have a piece. And so if they give that away, they don't have anything left. So just think about that. That reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. You're not going to do anything but make him angry. The second portion of it says, give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. That's just a continuation of verse 8, where it says that a wise man, you tell a wise man or correct a wise man, he will love you. If you give him instruction, he'll take that instruction and improve himself. We shouldn't be so quick to get angry and upset when people tell us when we do wrong. Now, I will say this, and this is about me, and so I can tell it. Now, I was elected circuit judge, and I think I've told members of class 14 this, in 1990. And I went on the bench in 1991. And I never was the person that did like to go to parties and do the club scene. But I decided to go to the Elks in Tupelo, Mississippi one night, and I went downstairs where the bar was. And this was before I had made that promise to my mom that I wouldn't drink anymore. And I was down there, and people were doing a little of everything, and I was a circuit judge in that district. And a friend of mine came up to me, he said, man, what are you doing here? You never come to the Elks. And I told him, I said, well, I didn't want people to think after I got elected judge I was better than them. And so I just came here. He said, let me tell you one thing. He says, man, I know you, and I'm telling you this as a friend. He said, you don't need to be hanging around, coming down here to the thing, get caught up in it, something like that. He gave me good advice. He gave me good advice. I thanked him for it, and I never went back. And that's what a wise man, and I'm not by no means saying that I'm wise, but I'm not foolish either. I understand that. And so I want you all to understand, when you give a wise person good advice and a lot of mother wit, because when you get old and you get gray hair, you've learned a lot, which means that you can share that wisdom with somebody else. And this is what Solomon is talking about. He says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And when you fear the Lord, it's not in the sense that you are afraid of him, but it's out of a sense of reverence that they're talking about here. And the knowledge of the holy is an understanding. So if you fear him out of a sense of reverence and understanding, that is the best way to do this. That this is what we're talking about, is wisdom and how it applies in our everyday life. Like I told you, One of my old high school teachers said, convince a fool against his will, and he is of the same opinion still. I don't care what you say, they're going to always think about that. They'll get angry and upset with you, and you can tell them till you blue in the face, and they're still not going to change. On the other hand, a wise person will appreciate any correction that you give them, and they will move on. They'll thank you for it, and you won't lose a friend. The final outline is Folly's house. Now, if you look at Folly's house, the first verse says, a foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. She's got a lot of talk. She looks good. Whereas the wisdom lady, she built her own house. She built her own house. In addition to building her own house, she had all those 7 pillars. You've seen houses with these beautiful pillars holding them up, and 7 represents completeness. Folly don't have anything to offer. She probably rents. Don't even have her own house. For she sitteth at the door of her house on a seat in the place of the city. She's looking for somebody simple coming by who hadn't made up their mind. And like I told you, and this is what they said, people who are simple, they're not talking about just stupid, but they're talking about they hadn't made up their mind in the direction that they need to take their life and who they need to be around. So wisdom says, do this. Folly says, don't worry about it. You can get that some other time. Just come on in and spend a little time with me. And you go in, and next thing you know, you stayed too long, you're in trouble at home when you should have been at home in the first place. But this is folly. To call passengers who go right on their way. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she says to him. Well, if you turn in there, you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. You'll end up in a lot of trouble. Bills going unpaid, things being repossessed, not having food on your table to take care of the kids, things that you would normally wouldn't do. Verse 17 says, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Well, you can ask David about that, about stolen waters are sweet. Bathsheba was married to Uriah. David noticed her on a roof. He invited her to his house. She became pregnant. She told David she was pregnant. David now has to come up with a plan how he can get rid of Uriah. The end result of it says that the stolen waters are not sweet and bread eaten in secret. Well, the bread was eaten in secret, but it ended up coming to life. David wasn't able to build the temple because he had blood on his hand. With the things, if you go into Folly's house, you'll end up having to lie about where you've been, who you've been with, who you call on your cell phone. You think about it. Just think about this. Well, and finally, but he knoweth not that the dead are there and her guests are in the depths of hell. Well, the depth of hell is just a bottomless pit. You just go further and further down. And you think about this, what wisdom does for you. Remember, wisdom comes from God. And if you remember what Solomon prayed for, he prayed that the Lord would give him an understanding heart, that he may know how to judge his people. He said he was nothing but a little child. This is the kind of heart that you need. This is the kind of heart that we all need, and an understanding heart where we'll know how to treat each other, where we'll know how to do what's in the best interest of everyone concerned. And remember now, we're going to have an exam on this, so you need to know all of this. Now, you all remember, we've had a really good lesson, but the lesson don't mean anything unless we go out and live it. So as I close out, it's been my pleasure to have the opportunity to come before you this moment. But before we go, I want to do a short prayer. Lord, thank you for another day and another opportunity to teach your word. I pray that what we've done and what we've said will help somebody. I pray that we will not only read about it, but I pray that we'll be doers of the word and not hearers alone. These and other blessings I ask in His Son, in Jesus' name and for His sake. Amen.
In a little tent, yeah. And just like the river I've been running, been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, y'all. But I know a change gon' come. Can I get a witness out there?
Oh, yes you will.
Yeah. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's someday beyond the sky. Oh, it's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come, yeah.
Oh, yes it will.
Just wave your hands right there, somebody. This is my favorite part. Then I go to my brother. I said, brother, oh, brother, would you help me believe?
Would you help me please?
But he winds up. Anybody know somebody like that? Winds up knocking me. Yeah, back down, back down, to my knees. There were times when I thought I wouldn't last for long, but now I feel that I can carry on. It's been a long time, huh?
It's been a long
I wish I had a witness out there. A long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Can I get one witness to stand to your feet right there?
Oh, yes it will.
Wave your hands right where you stand. Come on. Oh, change is gonna come. You want to tell your neighbor tonight? Can I get one witness? Oh, yeah. A change. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. If we can get together, a change gonna come. A change is gonna come. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, it will. It's been a long time coming, y'all. But I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. Yeah.